Listen. In the immense quiet of a world without machines, can you hear it? Not a sound, but the ghost of one. It is the first groan of wood turning on a wooden axle, the scrape of a stylus against wet clay, the almost silent twitch of a magnetized needle swinging toward a truth hidden beyond the horizon. We think of history as a pageant of kings and empires, of grand pronouncements and clashing armies. We are mistaken. History is a story of whispers, of small, world-breaking objects born in dust and silence, artifacts that did not simply serve us, but fundamentally rewired the human soul. They are the architects of our consciousness, the invisible scaffolding upon which our reality is built, and their work is not finished. The central conceit of our age is that we are masters of our tools. We invent, we innovate, we control. But what if the inverse is truer? What if our most foundational inventions were not tools, but bargains? Covenants made in the Neolithic twilight, the consequences of which we are only now beginning to comprehend. Each one offered a gift: speed, security, memory, reach, and each one in return took something from us. They set us upon a path, an accelerating, seemingly irreversible trajectory. To understand these ancient inventions is not to engage in a quaint historical exercise. It is to perform an archaeology of our own minds, to uncover the source code of our modern anxieties, our triumphs, and our still unfolding fate. Consider the wheel. We see it now on children's toys and supercars, a symbol so ubiquitous it has become banal. But to witness it for the first time, sometime around 3500 BCE in the mud-brick cities of Mesopotamia, must have been an act of profound cognitive dissonance. For all of prior human existence, the world was friction. It was the drag of a sled, the strain of a beast, the ache in a human back. The world was a thing to be struggled against. The wheel was not an object, it was a principle. It was the discovery of a loophole in the physics of effort. It was the translation of a divine concept, the perfect circle, the celestial rotation of sun and moon into a terrestrial reality of wood and grease. We are told the story of progress. The wheel allowed for faster transport, for the movement of grain from field to city, for the expansion of trade. This is true, but it is a shallow truth. The real transformation was not in logistics, but in psychology. With the wheel, humanity's relationship with distance and time was irrevocably broken and remade. A journey that once took a week of hard plodding now took a day. The world did not merely become easier to traverse, it shrank. And in this shrinking, a new kind of mind was born. A mind that could conceive of empire not as a patchwork of neighboring valleys, but as a vast, interconnected network. The potter's wheel spun clay into uniform vessels, birthing mass production. The war chariot, a terrifying fusion of animal power and rotational mechanics, became the first instrument of blitzkrieg, rewriting the rules of conflict. But was this gift of speed an unalloyed good? The wheel introduced a new imperative: acceleration. Once society could move faster, it had to move faster. The supply chain, the military campaign, the very rhythm of urban life became tethered to this new, unnatural velocity. It created a world that privileged the hub over the periphery, the city over the countryside, the network over the isolated community. The wheel did not just conquer friction on the ground. It conquered the friction of local custom, of slowness, of contemplation. It set in motion a dynamic of perpetual growth and expansion that continues to drive us today, a frantic spinning toward a destination we never consciously chose. We are still caught in its vortex, mistaking momentum for progress. If the wheel reconfigured our sense of space, then agriculture was the invention that chained us to it. We call it a revolution, the Neolithic Revolution, a term that implies a sudden, triumphant leap forward. But perhaps it was less a revolution and more a grand, tragic bargain. For hundreds of thousands of years, we were wanderers, our lives dictated by the rhythm of migrating herds and fruiting trees. Our world was vast, our possessions few, our sense of time cyclical. We were, in a way, profoundly free. Then, somewhere around 10,000 BCE, we made a trade. We traded the vastness of the world for the certainty of a single plot of land. We traded the freedom of the hunt for the security of the harvest. We knelt, and in the dark, cool earth, we planted a seed. In that act, we created the concept of the future, not the cyclical future of returning seasons, but a linear, anxious future of planning, labor, and investment. The farmer is a creature, obsessed with what is to come. Will there be enough rain? Will the pests arrive? Will the harvest be bountiful? This new anxiety was the engine of civilization. To manage it, we invented irrigation, building canals that were not just channels for water, but lines of control drawn upon the landscape. We domesticated animals, transforming wild beasts into living machines. And most critically, we created surplus. For the first time in human history, a small group of people could produce enough food to feed a much larger group. This surplus was the seed of everything that followed: the city, the priest, the king, the soldier, the artist, the philosopher. None of them could exist without the farmer's excess, but surplus is a dangerous thing. It must be stored, guarded, and distributed. It creates a distinction between those who have and those who have not. It creates the need for walls, for laws, for taxes. The first furrow dug in the earth was also the first line of a property deed, the first border of a nation. In trading, our nomadic freedom for a bowl of grain, we invented hierarchy, inequality, and the state. Was it a fair trade? We live inside the answer: the concrete canyons of our cities, the intricate webs of our laws, the very fact of a global population of 8 billion, all of it grew from that first, hopeful, terrifying seed. We gained the world, perhaps, but what of the wild, unbounded soul we left behind in the tall grass? The new complexities of this settled, surplus-driven world, of taxes owed, of grain stored, of laws declared, created an intolerable pressure on the most fragile of human faculties: memory. An oral tradition can preserve epics and genealogies, but it cannot reliably track 10,000 bushels of wheat. The human brain, for all its wonders, is a leaky vessel. The solution, arriving in Mesopotamia some 5,000 years ago, was another act of abstraction, as profound as the wheel. It was the mark, the scratch of a reed stylus on a tablet of wet clay. Writing. We romanticize writing as the birth of literature and poetry. Its origins were far more prosaic. The first written words were not odes to love or existential queries. They were records: 3 sheep for the temple, debt of 5 silver shekels. It was the language of accountants and bureaucrats. But in this mundane act of inscription, humanity crossed a threshold. Thought, once an ephemeral event happening inside a skull, a thing of sound and air, could now be captured, frozen in time, and made external. It could be owned. This was a schism in the nature of knowledge itself. In a pre-literate society, knowledge is communal, fluid, and embodied. It lives in the memory of the elder, in the shared performance of a ritual. It is constantly being retold and reinterpreted. To know is to participate. Writing changed all of that. It created a new kind of authority, the authority of the text. What was written down was permanent, official, and objective in a way that spoken memory could never be. The law was no longer the negotiated wisdom of the community. It was the unchangeable code carved in stone. History was no longer a living story. It was a fixed record, controlled by the scribe who held the stylus. For millennia, this power was concentrated in the hands of an elite few. The immense cost and difficulty of producing manuscripts, whether on clay, papyrus, or parchment, ensured that knowledge remained a carefully guarded treasure. Then, a series of innovations, culminating in Gutenberg's press in the 15th century, shattered this monopoly. If writing imprisoned thought, the printing press unleashed it like a contagion. The voice that once spoke to a few dozen in a monastery's scriptorium could now whisper in the ear of thousands. An idea, a scientific theory, a theological dissent, a revolutionary tract, could now replicate and spread with the speed of a virus. Did Gutenberg know he was igniting a firestorm? He printed Bibles, seeking to glorify God's Word. But in Yatsatius making the text accessible, he inadvertently demolished the central authority of the church that interpreted it. People could read for themselves, and in doing so, they could disagree. The Protestant Reformation, the Scientific Revolution, the Age of Enlightenment, these were revolutions born of ink and paper. But this liberation, too, had its shadow. A flood of information does not guarantee a tide of wisdom. It can create confusion, factionalism, and the illusion of knowledge without the rigor of understanding. The printing press was the ancestor of the 24-hour news cycle and the social media feed. It gave us the power to broadcast our thoughts across the world, but it gave us no tools to ensure those thoughts were true or wise or kind. We are still reeling from the explosion it started, drowning in echoes, while ideas were beginning to fly across Europe on printed pages. Another, quieter revolution was taking place on the high seas. It centered on a strange and magical object, a sliver of magnetized iron floating in a bowl of water, stubbornly pointing to a place that no one could see. The compass, developed for maritime use in Song Dynasty China around the 11th century, was an instrument of pure faith. It asked sailors to trust an invisible force over the evidence of their own senses, over the sun, the stars, and the familiar shape of the coastline. To accept the compass was to accept that the world was governed by hidden laws, consistent and exploitable. It was a tool of empiricism, but it felt like sorcery, and it broke the world open. Before the compass, the ocean was a barrier, a terrifying void. To lose sight of land was to be lost. With the compass, the ocean became a highway. It transformed the map of the human mind. Continents that were once abstract legends on the periphery of the known world became destinations. The voyages of Columbus, da Gama, and Magellan were not just feats of courage. They were feats of trust in a twitching needle. This new ability to navigate the void unleashed the age of globalism. For the first time, the entire planet was stitched together into a single economic and political system. But connection is a double-edged sword. The same ships that carried silver and spices also carried smallpox and syphilis. The same knowledge of sea lanes that enabled trade also enabled conquest and colonization. The compass allowed Europe to project its power across the globe, initiating centuries of exploitation whose consequences still shape our geopolitical landscape. It dissolved the old boundaries of the world, but in their place, it drew new, harsher lines of power and dominion. The needle that pointed north also pointed the way to a new and brutal chapter of human history, one in which one part of the world learned to systematically predate upon the others. We call this the Age of Discovery. For many it was the Age of Catastrophe. The wheel, the seed, the mark, the needle. These are not four separate stories, but four acts in a single, continuous drama. They are a self-reinforcing loop. The agricultural surplus required writing to manage it. The wealth generated by settled life and trade funded the risky voyages the compass made possible. The printing press spread the new geographical and scientific knowledge gleaned from those voyages. The wheel, in its more advanced form as gears and pulleys, drove the press and built the great ships. Each invention created the conditions for the next, locking us ever more tightly into a system of accelerating complexity. We stand now at what seems like the pinnacle of this trajectory, surrounded by the dazzling descendants of these ancient tools. Our cars are the children of the wheel, Our global supply chains, the legacy of the compass. Our internet, the apotheosis of the printing press. We have built a world of unimaginable speed, connection, and productive power. We have bent the forces of nature to our will, and yet a sense of profound disquiet hangs in the air. The anxieties seeded thousands of years ago have flowered in strange and monstrous forms. The acceleration of the wheel has led to a climate crisis. The surplus of agriculture has led to grotesque inequality. The information explosion of the press has fractured our shared reality. The global connection of the compass has made us vulnerable to pandemics and systemic financial collapse. We have more, know more, and can do more than any humans in history, but it is not clear that we are any wiser or happier. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not how these inventions came to be, but why we continue to follow the path they laid down, even as the warning signs flash red all around us. We are like the first sailor who trusted the compass, sailing blindly into an unknown ocean, guided by a force we use but do not fully understand. The code written by these ancient tools is still running. It is in the relentless logic of the market, the bureaucratic inertia of the state, the very structure of our thought. We live inside a machine built by ghosts, and the most haunting question of all is not about the past, but about the future. What is the next invention? The next bargain? And when it is offered to us, will we this time have the wisdom to read the fine print?
If you enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell to the later update from my channel. Thank you for watching till the end, and see you in the next video.